All right, Josh, it's great to meet you. I'm super excited. As a kid, I don't think I would have ever thought I'd be talking to somebody who makes sports cards. And I don't know if you would have thought you would have been doing this at this point in your life, thinking as a kid as well, but really appreciate you investing the time with me.
Yeah, you're welcome. I actually started a card shop in my basement when I was 7 years old. So I guess I saw this coming from the time I was pretty young. I've never done anything but trading cards, so I wouldn't know anything else at this point.
That's awesome. I was going to ask you about that. Like, what, when you think back, we'll talk about other stuff too, but tell me about like the sets. When you think about like the sets that you collected, maybe earliest as a kid, like what's the set or two that comes to mind?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the big one was certainly 1989 Upper Deck. I mean, I was a big Griffey fan growing up, obviously, like a lot of kids. Just first card for Upper Deck, first Griffey card, very iconic card in the sports card world in general. And that's admittedly what kind of got me into cards really heavily. It's why I wanted to work at Upper Deck and eventually went to work at Upper Deck and worked in product development. And that was all basically because of that one card. I still have an affinity for a lot of the late 90s inserts, stuff like that, that was mid to late 90s, where it was really in the heart of my collecting. Admittedly, now it's not as much about collecting as it is a business, which is the downside to working in the industry. But I remember opening up 1994 Flair packs trying to pull a Ken Griffey Jr. base card. And this is the days when there weren't packs for $3, $4, $5, and everything was affordable. And most of it was just base cards and inserts and just trying to get a card number to 1,000. And now, like,
Yeah,
you get a 101 and you're spoiled. Yeah.
that's funny. So when you were seven, like, how did you get to the card store? Was it like your mom or dad? Did you have a routine around that?
Yeah, so my mom used to take me because it just so happened that the card shop that I went to a lot was in the same shopping center as a Winn-Dixie supermarket. So my mom would go to the Winn-Dixie once a week, go do her shopping, and I would tag along. I remember vividly, I'd get a corn dog from the bakery or the Winn-Dixie, eat that for lunch, and then I'd walk over to the card shop and I'd spend however much time. I, of course, wanted my mom to take 4 hours in the grocery store, which it never seemed like it took her long enough. But so I'd go to the card shop while she was finishing up at the grocery store, and I'd spend 20, 30 minutes in there talking to the owner, talking to the people there, buying some packs, trading. This was the days when I would take I remember when Cal Ripken Jr. was getting ready to break the streak with Lou Gehrig, I'd take my Cal Ripken Jr. cards and trade them for Griffey because I didn't care about Cal Ripken. I'd be going through my boxes at home trying to find my Cal Ripkens or whoever was hot at the time. Because back
Yeah.
then, again, base cards would get a Cal Ripken base card would sell for $5 in a store because he was hot and there was no eBay and there was no internet to buy stuff. So everybody was just going to a store. Yeah, pretty much. I don't know that I went every week, but in my mind, it
All the
feels
time.
like I went pretty much every week and would stop by and say hello. I got to know the owners and got to know the people that worked there and a bunch of the customers, and
That's really
the rest
cool.
is history. Yeah.
Did you have a budget or how did you get
Yeah,
money for that at that
yeah,
age?
yeah, I got an allowance. I don't know what it was back then, probably $5 a week or something for doing chores and all that. So I got an allowance. Admittedly, I could probably buy one pack of cards, but I had accumulated quite a bit of stuff. Would trade with kids in the neighborhood. Some of it was when I was seven and opened the card shop, I would sell cards to kids in the neighborhood. I'd try and sell a card for even if it was $3, whatever. That was $3 that could go to my pot to try and buy some new stuff. I
Wow.
would take whatever money I had accumulated, 3, 4, 5, 10, 12 bucks. And then obviously birthdays, holidays, stuff like that, I'd get a little bit of a bonus and then I'd have extra. And then I'd go to the card shop and I'd buy a couple packs or buy a couple singles and trade with the shop owner and do whatever I could to get to the next step and get some new inventory for the card shop and everything else.
That's
So,
crazy. Okay, so this might go off the rails, but that's okay. So Griffey was your guy, or who is
yep,
like
yep.
that
Griffey
was
was
your
my guy for sure.
okay, that
Yeah.
was your guy.
Yeah.
Okay, so where do you think like who gave you the idea to sell cars? Was it on your own, or did one of your parents?
It was mostly on my own. My mom and dad were really not. My dad, interestingly enough, was not into sports really at all. A little bit, but not a lot. My mom is a diehard Cubs fan, so I got the baseball side from my mom. My dad was in sales, so maybe it passed on to me a little bit where I just wanted to wheel and deal. But I guess there was a bunch of kids in the neighborhood. We would all just run around and we all ended up buying cards, going to shops, going to shows. I remember I had one friend and his dad would take us to card shows every couple weekends and we'd go to a show. And that was like a huge adventure because then you'd get to see cards that you hadn't seen. Because the
Yeah,
card shop, admittedly, was most of it was staying the same from week to week, but the card show was a whole new adventure. And then trying to find a deal and dollar boxes and whatever we could to try and find a deal to pass on to the next time.
that's crazy. It's funny because like I was thinking about this. I grew up in like Bergen County, New Jersey, so northern New Jersey. I never knew that you could go to something like I never knew card shows existed. We would
Sure.
go $5. I remember when I got like my first pack of Topps Finest. I'm like, okay, I can't buy anything for 3 weeks because at that time it was such a premium. Like I didn't know like you can go to. I'd watch wrestling all the time. I didn't know you can actually go in the East Coast and go see it live. Like just events I
Right.
just wasn't aware of. And I imagine my parents they knew about it. I don't know. They want to tell me about it. But so were you pricing at that age? Were you just using a Beckett?
Admittedly, I never really used the Beckett a whole lot. A lot of it was so much
Interesting.
supply and demand.
Really? Okay.
And admittedly, the Griffies always cost somebody more because those are the ones I wanted to keep. If you wanted to buy one of my Griffies, it was going to cost you more. The reality was, and this is when it was so much fun. And not that it's not fun now, but there
It's
wasn't
different. It's different for sure.
this comp word that
Yeah.
gets thrown around at every card show and every shop, and you didn't have to deal with that. You didn't have to have somebody looking at their phone saying, "Oh, the last one on eBay sold for 82 and you want 85. I'll pay you 82." It was just, did they want it or didn't they? And if they did and they had the $3, even if they might be able to buy it for $1 from the card shop, it wasn't accessible to just do that right then. So you could make up your own pricing. Some people would look at the Beckett and some people would use that as a guide, but the reality was is I don't remember it being any more useful then than really it is now, where it was just a price that was made up by an arbitrary person that, okay, maybe they did some market research, but there's no way you could ever do research to know really what the market is for any of these cards. And that's true now, even today, like all these websites that have pricing. There's so many private sales. There's so many things it shows that don't get reported. There's no way anyone could ever really understand the high or low of a card. And so I made it up whatever I felt was fair. If I needed more money, maybe that week I priced stuff a little bit higher and
Yeah.
hoped for the best. I was just winging it.
It's interesting you mentioned that because like I will use some of the apps and whatnot, but then like I also look at like those apps, they don't pull data from Facebook. There's
Yeah.
so many deals that happen to you mentioned privately or through other social media. I guess people buy on Instagram too, right? So
Yep.
it's not pulling that data.
It's
It's
impossible for it to pull all the data. It's not
yeah.
humanly possible for it to pull all the data because even at the shows, they're like at the National, which is coming up here in 2 months, a month and a half, there's going to be millions of transactions and those don't get reported anywhere. It's not like everybody has to go back to their computer and type in, okay, I sold this card. Nobody ever knows about those sales. There's no way that there's enough data to actually give a super accurate representation unless if it's a one of one or something. Sure, maybe you can see
Yeah.
what it sold for last time, but it's very hard to tell.
When I talk about my friends now that I've got back into it and I try to explain it to them, it's almost like buying a house. Right? And they're like, oh, I get it. Okay. What is one piece of advice you would give someone buying a card that maybe is $100 plus card? Is it like a specific app they should use plus eBay? What advice would you give somebody just to make sure they get a fair price?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is going to sound really basic, but for me, and especially today, because so many people now are so worried about what everything's worth, and if they got a good deal, and if it's going to go up in value, and if they're going to make money, and yeah, yada yada. When I started, it wasn't about any of that, and I think a lot of it needs to go back to that. Buy a card that you want because you want it, not because you think it's going to be worth triple the price in the future. Buy a card that you feel comfortable with the pricing. Admittedly, the only comp I ever look at, and I'm not out there buying $100,000 cards.
Right.
But if I want to buy something for my collection, I look at eBay and just look at auctions and see what they sold for. And if I see one pop up that's similarly priced, I buy it. But the reality is, so much stuff, it's hard to find a real accurate comp unless you're buying a Prism base card. Sure, like those are pretty easy to comp. But if you're trying to buy a rare insert or an autograph patch, or the reality is those can change so much depending on the price of the patch, depending on how clean the autograph is. There's so many different avenues. Admittedly, I probably, if I buy something, I buy more off of eBay than anywhere else. Probably just because it's easy and you're protected. I do like the new, I guess it's not really that new anymore, but the protection where they send it through the authentication process, whatever it is. As the seller, it's a pain because you got to send it to them and sometimes they kick stuff that they shouldn't. But as a buyer, you don't have to worry as much anymore. If somebody has low feedback, it's got to go through authentication, so they
Uh,
can't really pull a fast one on you. And that was always the fear in the past. So eBay has probably been my go-to, but admittedly, a lot of that's old school because I grew up on eBay. Like my eBay account, I started in 1999. Like I've had my eBay account for 26 years. When I started doing eBay, there wasn't anything else. You didn't have check out my cards, and you didn't have all these streaming apps with whatnot and Facebook. And we didn't have any of that to buy anything. So I just got used to using eBay. And I think because of that's what I'm very used to for sure, because it's very accessible. There's always going to be more inventory on eBay than anywhere else. That's pretty much true with any card. If you want to search on one of these whatnot or TikTok, it's very hard to find a specific card. Like the people just auction what they auction, and you have to wait for the card you want to pop up. It's not like eBay where I can go and search and say, okay, what Lionel Messi autographs are there that are at auction that end tonight?
Yeah.
Like it's still the best for stuff like that. It's the most accessible. And the reality is it's probably one of the safest too, just because it's a huge company. It's been around forever. Like you're protected by their protection program. You typically pay with a credit card. Because I know buying on the internet can still be scary for some people. Admittedly, the younger you are, probably the less scary it is because people are just used to it. That's how everybody shops for everything now.
Yeah.
I've always been an eBay guy.
Do you remember? So I imagine because you've been in this, like when did grading first come about? And were you skeptical or what was that experience for you?
Yeah, I remember it being around when I first started. Now, it wasn't something that really anybody did. It was an option that very few people utilized. I started utilizing it a little bit as I got more into it. I remember in college I would grade a little bit. So like early 2000s, I remember grading an Allen Iverson Topps Chrome rookie and hitting a gem mint. And like back then, like that was a big deal because those just didn't exist back then. I didn't use it mainstream. I started doing it, like I said, probably early 2000s. And then as it grew bigger, I started doing a little bit more. And it's ebbed and flowed. I remember when it first started, everyone was doing Beckett, and I was using Beckett because Beckett was really what everyone with any current cards used. If you had vintage, you did PSA, but everything new was going to Beckett. So if you had Bowman Chrome, SP Authentic, Topps Chrome, any of that, it was going through Beckett every time. And then it transitioned and then everything was PSA. So for 5, 6 years, especially during the COVID years, everything was PSA. That was the creme de la creme. They sold for the most. And now there's a lot of options out there. PSA still sells for the most, but that part of it is fascinating to me because why is a PSA 10 worth more than a Beckett 9.5 or worth more than an SGC 10? Like at this point, it's just arbitrary. And I'm here to tell you, I've sent enough stuff for grading. I can send the same card to all 4, 5, 6 companies. It's not going to get graded the same every time. But PSA isn't genuinely harder than the others, which makes their cards worth more. It's a total crapshoot. Like,
Yeah.
and there's been different things, like Beckett integrating the black label. Then everybody, there was a big rush to send stuff that was in really good condition to try and get a black label, and they would sell for a huge premium. And PSA doesn't have that. But now part of the problem with PSA is they charge based on the value of the card. So if you have an old, I had a buddy who just graded a bunch of like Jordan and LeBron old exquisite stuff. Nobody ever grades that with PSA because you got to pay him $3 or $4,000 to grade it. You can do that at Beckett for $100, and it,
Oh, okay. I saw somebody recently at a show here in Portland and
yeah,
this guy, we were talking and he had this case with him and I didn't really know what it, like I stopped at like, when I look at my like cards from my childhood, I stopped at 96.
okay,
And so I missed the boat of exquisite. He had the most amazing stuff I've ever seen, and they were all Beckett graded.
yep, that's why. Anybody that has high end stuff, most of that high end stuff you want to have graded just because you don't really want to sell a card that's $100,000 or plus and not have it graded because then somebody's going to say, oh, it's got a pock mark on it or whatever. So you want it graded. But why would you pay PSA $5,000 to grade that card when Beckett will do it for 100? And it's going to set, it doesn't, the grade on those cards is pretty irrelevant. Like people are buying a Jordan
Authenticating it.
Exquisite.
Yeah.
Yes,
The
exactly.
autograph.
People are buying the Jordan Exquisite because it's Jordan Exquisite, not because it's a gem mint versus an eight. They don't really care. So you might as well put it in the cheapest holder.
You
Yeah.
think there's ever a world where the grading thing gets course corrected? Is there?
Yes and no. There's been ebb and flows for sure within it. And look, everything took off during COVID, but everything on the grading side went completely nuclear and then it corrected to some extent. There
Okay.
were cards like Prism base cards. Base cards were the biggest thing. I remember like a Tyler Hero Prism base PSA 10 was like $300 during COVID, and now that card's $10. But that was just part of it was just the craziness of the market. I've never understood paying that much of a premium for stuff that's especially on cards that are so easily graded. Like, it's one thing if you have a card like some of this old vintage stuff and you want to buy a Don Mattingly rookie card, a PSA 10 is going to cost you an arm and a leg, but good luck getting one. I was actually looking at the pop report for Dan Marino rookie cards yesterday, of all things, and 0.3% of those cards ever graded by PSA are 10s. So, like, it's almost impossible to hit a PSA 10 on a Dan Marino rookie. So, that card, yeah, I get it. If you want a 10, I don't encourage people to buy a raw one and try and grade it. Good luck. The odds of doing that are astronomical. So if you
Okay.
really want one and you want to buy the best copy, yeah, I get buying graded. But like new stuff, a Bowman Chrome card, every one is a 9 or a 10. Like, it's not like they're putting out cards that are off-centered like they used to, and they haven't been sitting in a box for 20 years. Like, they're going straight from a pack to a holder now. They're almost all in 9 and 10 shape. So now it's almost like you're just as well off buying a raw card and grading it yourself, as opposed to paying that crazy premium to get a PSA 10 or a BGS 10 or something like that. So for me now, if I want something, I don't care if it's graded. I'd rather buy something raw and grade it myself if I care about it being graded. To me, the only reason to grade stuff, admittedly, was to resell it. Like, if I'm just keeping
Yeah.
stuff,
Yeah.
I don't like, what do I care? And some people like it because it puts it in a nice holder and it's a little bit more protected because if it falls, it's not going to break open. Whereas even if it's in a screw down or a magnetic, you never know, it can pop out, whatever. So I get that. But at the end of the day, to me, grading is truly only about the resale of the card. If I'm going to keep a card forever, what difference does it make to me if it's a 7 or a 10? I don't care.
Yeah. Do you think vintage cards should be graded on a scale though? Wouldn't it make okay, to your point, pack from the pack to
Right.
the PSA or
Yep.
wherever? Of course it's going to be a 10.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's an interesting question. I think what's happened there is they're graded on the same way as current cards are, but the price is a lot higher. So that's where the scale comes in.
Mm,
So, like on a new card, if it's a PSA 10, maybe it's worth three times what a raw one is worth. Whereas on a vintage card, a raw versus a PSA 10 is can be 1,000 times. So, like the price of a PSA 6 or a 7 might be the same price as a raw, whereas on a current card, a PSA 9 is worth the same as a raw. So the grading scale is roughly the same, which I like because to me, a 10 is a 10. And
yeah.
that's what I've had problems with. And look, there's never going to be any confirmation of this, but there's all kind of speculation of population control. Does PSA control the population on a very expensive card where they're not going to give 10s, even if it is a 10, because they don't want there to be too many of them, because then it doesn't make their 10 worth as much. I don't know if any of that actually happens. The reality is, even if it does, we're never going to know for sure. But the end consumers really dictate, okay, this card is harder to grade, so a 6 is worth more than a 6 would be worth on a card that's really easy to grade. I would hate to see a PSA 10 being a card that's really a PSA 8, but it's graded on a scale, so it's a 10. I don't think I'd like that. I think I like the fact that a 10 is a 10.
Okay.
If it's centered right and it's clean, it's a 10. Obviously, it's going to be a lot harder to get a 10 on a card from the 50s or 60s than it is on a card from 2025. But it should be because nobody was grading them back then. No one was taking care of them. So.
Is there, I know like obviously with like fanatics and stuff, there's relationships with grading companies and things like that. But in your world, does a relationship with grading companies matter? Is there an intertwine there?
Yeah, admittedly, we've had some, I don't want to say negative experiences. Being totally honest, we get treated a little differently. Everyone is fearful of Fanatics and Panini, in my opinion. So, like, the grading companies are never going to come out and just say a card of theirs isn't authentic. And, they're never going to do some of the stuff that they might do with ours. We had a heck of a time getting them to pass all of our Lionel Messi autographs. And recently, I don't know if you've heard, but recently it came out that a bunch of the Topps Lionel Messis are fake. And it was interesting to us because when they thought one of our Messis was fake, they would just kick it back to the collector and not say anything. When the Topps ones are fake, they send them a long letter about, we already know that there's an issue with this card. We're working on behalf of Topps. We will replace this card for you. Blah. Clearly preferential
Interesting.
treatment to Topps. I think it's crazy that there's any ownership from one of those companies to the next. It should be all individual. There should not be any cross pollination in terms of, it shouldn't be one parent company that owns everything. That is absolutely, in my opinion, a conflict of interest.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah,
Yeah, I
100%.
think it
Yeah,
absolutely is. I don't think the company that owns Fanatics should own a grading company. I don't think the company that owns a grading company should own Panini or Fanatics or Leaf. Like it should be separate. It'd be like Kelly Blue Book owning a Toyota dealership, and now all the Toyotas have a higher resale value. Of course, they're going to say that. It makes sense for them to say that. So
100%.
I that seems fishy to me for sure. I can't believe that collectors would be happy about that because it's very hard for me to believe they can say all they want that nothing fishy is going on. It's very hard for me to believe that's true.
Yeah, 100%. You mentioned your dad was in sales. I'm just curious, like, what did your parents do for a living, and how did that maybe shape some of the career choices that you
Yeah.
made?
So my dad was in sales his whole life. He actually sold baby diapers most of his life. Unfortunately, he stopped selling them before I had children, so I didn't get free diapers. But yeah, so he was in sales. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. She did a lot of volunteer work for the church, stuff like that, but she mostly took care of us and watched the Cubs games. I remember coming home and the Cubs, of course, play during the day a lot of the times. She would come home or I'd come home from work, school, and she'd be watching the Cubs. And that was how I grew up, but couldn't have asked for better parents. It definitely shaped my dad being the go-getter. Admittedly, I've never been great at sales like he was. My dad could sell anything. He didn't care. For him, it wasn't about the product, it was about the sale. And for me, it's I can sell sports cards because I love sports cards and I'm passionate. But if I had to go out there and try and sell lumber or bricks or pens, I'd be horrible at it because that's I'm just not a born salesman like my dad was for sure.
That's awesome. Do you have a lot of siblings or?
Yeah, so I've got an older brother and older sister. My sister's just a little bit older than me, like a year and a half. My brother's about 6.5 years older than me.
Okay. What would you say a lesson from mom or dad that stands out? I don't know if you have kids, but something that stands out that
I
maybe you'd
do.
want, okay, that maybe you'd want
Yeah,
that you've instilled maybe already in your kids. What comes to mind?
yeah. I think like I've got a 6 and 10 year old girl, and I think the biggest thing, I'm going to sound old when I say this, but I think the youth of today, so to speak, being appreciative for what you have. And that was one thing my dad did fairly well for himself. I didn't long for anything as a kid. We got to go on nice vacations but making sure that you appreciate that and respect that's not necessarily a given. That you got to work hard for these things because I'm constantly telling my kids I've been fortunate to be fairly successful and I get to be the president of Leaf Trading Cards and my kids don't want for anything either. But it's funny, like sometimes they'll complain about, oh, you can't stay at the beach with us for longer. And I'm like, do you want to stay here? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, then dad's got to go back to work. That's the way the world works. So I think just appreciating everything and trying to understand that things aren't given to you. You have to work for them. And that's, I think that's a tough thing now. And instant gratification is a horrible thing in today's world because everything is at everyone's fingertips. You want something, you buy it on Amazon. You look at TikTok, you look at all this social media. And admittedly, I do know social media because I hate social media because I feel like it's like everybody looks at it and they see what somebody else is doing. There's always going to be somebody with more money. There's always going to be somebody on a nicer vacation, has a nicer car, a nicer house. And it's like everybody gets jealous and they buy into that it's unfair or life's not fair. Like for some people, life isn't fair, but I'm going off on a tangent here. But like to me, it's just about respecting that it takes hard work to get to what you want to do, whatever that is. And for some people, it's not about making a lot of money, it's about helping a lot of people. But it still takes, you can't help people if you're not willing to put in the effort. You can't make money if you're not willing to put in the effort, no matter, even if you're a basketball player. LeBron James is a perfect example. I'm not sure any professional athlete works as hard as he does at his craft. And that's probably why he's the best. And yeah, has he made an obscene amount of money? Of course. But that man puts every ounce of effort he has into being the best basketball player he can be. And that's a big reason why he's achieved the success he had.
Did you get a chance to see the interview with him and Steve Nash and Luca?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so it went up a couple days ago, and I just thought it was like really funny but fascinating part where Steve Nash, who's a great interviewer, asked Luca, "What have you learned about LeBron so far? Or maybe learn from him?"
Yeah.
And he's chuckling. I learned that this guy comes like to the arena 10 hours before the game starts. And he's like, and LeBron, you could tell he didn't really want him to say that, but like he's
Yeah.
kind of, yeah, I guess I'm the first guy there. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But for 20 years, that compounds to your
Right.
point.
Yeah. And that's a perfect example, too, to me, because he didn't have to. He was given amazing God given talent, obviously. LeBron James could have been one of the greatest ever without doing a whole lot. but he wanted to be the greatest ever, and he wanted to achieve everything he could. And okay, there's an argument between him and Jordan, whatever you want. But the reality is his body of work is going to be unparalleled in almost any sport. The amount of stuff he's achieved, the fact that he's still performing at the level he is at this age is
Crazy.
absolutely incredible. No other athlete in any other sport can do that. He's still one of the best, what, 5, 10 basketball players in the world, and he's older than everybody. As his son is playing, like he could be a lot of these guys' dad legitimately, and he's still
Yeah.
better than they are. And I attribute that to his hard work. Maybe when he was 23, he didn't have to work hard. He's got to work real hard now to still be as good as he is, because the God-given talent is still there. Nobody's body works the same when they're his age as it did when they were 20.
Yeah, it's the durability of him. And I'm a Warriors fan. I love Steph, and I'll pull a back muscle stepping out of the shower. And
Oh,
these
I know.
guys, I
I know.
know they
I go
do it so
trampoline
well.
and jump with my kids for 30 seconds, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm going to have a heart attack.
Yeah.
And this guy's, I'm not that much older than LeBron. I'm like 4 years older than him, and he's running up and down the court with 18, 19, and 20-year-olds. It's nothing. And that's just and that, again, that's work. That's hard work. And so I think hard work is such an important thing. So many, and I laugh at some of the people we hire at Leaf, because like we hire young people and it seems like like, they don't necessarily get that aspect. And I remember I tell them all the same story. When I was working at Upper Deck, when I first started, I was hourly, and every day I couldn't work overtime. They didn't want to pay overtime. So I would go clock out at 5 and I'd go back to my desk and I'd just keep working, because it wasn't about the money then. It was about learning as much as I could, gaining experience, making sure I was doing everything I could. And now I think some of that is lost on a lot of these kids, where they're just like, I'm not getting paid. Why would I'd rather go sit at home and play a video game? And I get it. I probably would have rather have done that too, but I wanted to do everything I could to learn about everything I could within the company and make sure I was putting forth as much effort as I possibly could.
That's pretty cool. I imagine you had a reverence for Upper Deck just growing up in the time that you did. I was curious, was there something that your parents did? Because it sounds like they probably could have spoiled you, and maybe at certain times they did.
Sure.
But was there something that they did that taught you that lesson? Like maybe there was like a bike you wanted, but they made you work for it or something. Like, do you recall anything like that?
Yeah, so it was, yeah, there were certainly things that if I needed a new pair of shoes, they'd go buy a new pair of shoes, whatever it was. In terms of like when I was in high school, if I wanted to go out for entertainment, I had to work. And I started working at a card shop when I was 16 and was working at shows on the weekend. Like I was already wheeling and dealing. And if I wanted to go to a movie, I never went to my parents and asked them, and they never expected to give me a bunch of money to entertain myself. So I think a lot of it was that, yeah, like I knew that if I wanted to just sit at home and watch TV, didn't really need money from them. But not to say they wouldn't help me, of course, but I don't remember one specific instance or one specific thing that I wanted that I had to make sure I worked for. But I wasn't afraid to work from the time I was willing to, or from the time I was allowed to have a job and could drive myself. I was working every day after school.
Wow. So
I was
you're working
working
at
the
the card
weekend.
shops early.
16. As soon as I
Wow.
was
Okay.
got my driver's license, I got a job at a card shop, started working there, and I worked at the same card shop all through high school and college. And the card shop was about an hour away from where I went to college, and every Saturday I would drive back and go work at the card shop. And some of it was, I wanted to work, but some of it was just I wanted to stay involved, wanted to stay connected. I was running an eBay business from our apartment in college with my roommate, where we were shipping stuff every day. We had a UPS pickup from our apartment building in college. Yeah. And it was great because like we were making good money, but I didn't have to go get a job and work at Starbucks and make at the time $5.50 an hour or whatever. We were selling automobile parts on eBay, like high performance parts. And he had a connection to buy them. So he would buy them and he would list them, and I'd do all the shipping and all the customer service. And
That's them.
looking back, like I know so much about UPS now, and it's funny. I'll tell somebody, "Oh, go ship that UPS," and they look at me like, "Oh, I don't know how to do that." Like, man, I was doing that when I was 18 years old, 19 years old. Like, I was running eBay. My mom, remember, she would go into a mailbox, etc., and they would know who I was because I was in there every day shipping packages. Yeah,
That's
and it's just
funny.
I was never afraid to work hard, and I think that's to me the biggest thing. Like my dad told me, and this is probably the thing that stuck with me more than anything, is he always told me, the harder you work, the luckier you get. And I think there's a lot of truth in that. And if you're willing to really work hard, you're probably going to have some breaks fall your way. Doesn't mean
Yes.
everything's going to go the way you want, but if you work really hard at stuff, it's probably going to you're going to end up doing okay. And again, some people get laid off, companies go under, whatever.
Yep.
But even if you get laid off, if you're really willing to work hard, you land on your feet, you get a new job, you're right back where you started. Yeah. And it's not that simple. There's other factors that go in. Most of the people I know that have really been willing to work hard have been pretty successful at whatever it is they wanted to be.
I agree. There is this like serendipity that happens. It's usually not the other way around. When you're sitting on the couch, you don't get lucky.
It's
It's
right.
like uncovering every rock. When you're in the middle of doing things like that's when you
Right.
typically get the magic happens. Maybe you get a break. A hundred
Yeah.
percent.
And
Yeah.
I think that's how you get noticed. You get noticed by the people that have the money that own these businesses or at the time that run the businesses and you get noticed. And I think so many kids are afraid to get noticed too. Like they just come in, they want to get there at 8, they leave at 5, and that's their work. And they think, oh, I'm doing my job. And they are. But I've tried to talk to a lot of them like, look, you can do that. There's plenty of people in this world that do that. But at the end of the day, if you really want to truly get ahead and really show yourself. And look, for everybody, that's not what for some people working that 8 to 5 is completely fine and they're okay with that. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think to really get ahead and to admittedly, for me to get to where I'm at, I couldn't have worked 8 to 5. I couldn't have
Yeah.
come in at 8, worked till 5, gone home, not done anything on the weekends, not taking calls. I have to travel more than I want. I've got 2 young kids and I hate being gone, but you got to make some sacrifices. And for me, I'm able to really provide for my family, and if I occasionally have to travel and make a sacrifice, so be it. And that's just the way the world works. Today is actually my wife's birthday, and my kids are like, why aren't you staying home? And I'm like, unfortunately, I got to go to work. That's just part of it. That's the way the world works. And the world doesn't always work the way you want it to. It works the way it works, and you have to try and manage it around it. So, yeah, it's
Yeah.
tough, but
Yeah, I
that's
hear
how it
you.
is.
Kids, the way they ask the questions, obviously, I'm sure you're going to do something nice. You can't take every weekday off for everything that happens if it doesn't fall on a weekend. So here, my kids they just turned 8 and 10. So
Okay. So
in a
very
similar
close to
boat.
mine. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, we have my daughter's recital is coming up. I'm coaching my son's little league team and we're trying to make it work where we can do both and like just the way they view the world and the timing of things. Obviously, all the
Yep.
events are important, but yeah, it's an interesting thing. I was gonna ask you too. The car shop you went to when you were 7, do are those people still around? Do they know what you do now?
They are not. Now, the card shop I worked at when I was 16, that shop, so the original owner passed away, gosh, probably 15 years ago, but the guy who took it over when I was in high school and then in college is still around. I talk to him from time to time. He gets a kick out of it because for me, I was just a guy that they hired that you never know if this kid knows what he's talking about. Like I was just some kid that knew sports and a little bit about cards. And obviously it ended up where I know a decent amount about cards now. The one that's really fun for me is the first job I had, like I would say the first real job, because the card shop is that's a high school job, whatever, was I worked at a distributor, a wholesale distributor, and they're still around. And I get a kick out of talking to them because they hired me fresh out of college. I was like there, I would help them on eBay and I was doing shipping. And I have to believe back then they were just hiring somebody because they needed somebody to help in the warehouse and do a little bit. And I have to believe that 20 years later, they would not have guessed that they had hired the person who would eventually be running Leaf Trading Cards. And so I get a kick out of that for sure. And they're still around. They still have their distributorship and they're a customer of ours now. And
That's
I get a
awesome.
kick out of that for sure.
What is a wholesale distributor? What is that
So they
exactly?
buy from the manufacturers. So they'll buy from us, from Panini. Tops is actually now that Fanatics bought them, they've cut out all the distribution. So Tops doesn't sell through the same channels. But these distributors have been around forever. They buy from the manufacturers. And basically what it allows is it allows the manufacturers to sell a big chunk to a distributor and not have to call up 300, 400 different card stores. So the distributor does that
Oh,
for us. So we'll sell 100 cases to them and then they'll go out and sell it to all the card shops. So we don't have to have a ton of sales reps. The other thing it does is they take a
interesting.
lot of the financial risk. So they'll give some of these people credit or terms. I don't want to have to extend terms to 100 different card shops. If they go belly up, it's not my problem. The distributor pays for the product. So they take a lot of the credit risk. They've been a
Interesting.
huge part of the card world forever. The other thing in cards, which is unique, is there's a lot of closeout opportunities where if a product doesn't necessarily sell out or work, we'll discount it. And there's sometimes it might be where the closeout opportunities are 6 figures. So there's not that many people that are going to buy that, but the distributors are all pretty well funded. So they can certainly afford to buy closeouts. And then again, then they worry about selling it to breakers, stores throughout the country, throughout the world, even.
Interesting. I didn't even knew that existed. I know it
Yeah,
exists
most
for
don't.
Yeah, and like
Yeah,
the
most people don't.
alcohol world
Yep.
is like I see certain industries with that, but that's
Yeah,
super
most people
fascinating.
don't because they're not public. They're not like you're never going to know who they are unless you're somebody that buys from them. You're not going to if you're working if you go to a card shop, you're never going to know that it's supplied by this distributor or you're never going to hear them. And it's funny, like they're the wealthiest people in the industry. Like yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, these guys have generational wealth because of, and most of them are gaming distributors too, where Pokemon and Magic are crazy hot right now, and so they're making a ton of money, but the reality is they take all the risk. They'll buy huge invoices and hope they can sell it. And their sales team is, and they're tasked with going out there and selling it to shops and breakers. And they're working on pretty small margins. They just do it over volume. They're taking big quantity and making 15, 20%, which isn't a huge margin, but they're just doing it time and time and time and time again.
Okay, interesting. Wow, I see like resellers in the IT world. It's like it sounds like almost like a similar model in a sense.
Sure.
Okay, so did you grow up in Chicago or where did you grow up?
Yes, I was born in Chicago, and then
Okay.
my dad got transferred when I was like 6. So I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. So I
Ah,
was in
okay.
Atlanta from the time I was 6 until about 23, and then I went to work for Upper Deck. So I moved to California for a short time, and then moved back to Atlanta to open a card shop. I had online retail. I did a bunch of different stuff. So I moved back, and then I was in Atlanta from I guess about 2006 until 20. Gosh, when did I move out here? 2022, I think. And then I moved out to Texas.
How did you get the job at Upper Deck?
So that was all thanks to my dad. Upper Deck at the time was a huge company, the biggest trading card company in the world. I had wanted to work there, and he was like, "Look, don't apply on their website. You're just going to get lost in the shuffle. That's not the way you do it." So he convinced me to write a letter, a handwritten letter, which imagine that in today's world. I wrote a handwritten letter to the owner of Upper Deck, who at the time was a guy named Richard McWilliam. And he said, send it FedEx overnight. Attention, Richard McWilliam. It'll get his attention. He'll open it thinking it's something important, and then he'll read it because he opens it. So I did that. So I sent a letter to Richard McWilliam, told him all the things I loved about Upper Deck, some things that I thought they could do better that I could potentially help with, some ideas, and sent it to him overnight. Oh, of course, I'm like, that was dumb, Dad. It didn't work. About a month later, it took about a month, but about a month later, the CFO calls me out of the blue. And I'm like, holy crap, Dad, the CEO or the CFO from Upper Deck just called me. So the CFO called me, did an interview with me. They were extremely slow on the interview process. So then about a month went by. Every time, of course, I'm losing hope, thinking, okay, it's not really happening. Then the head of product development, a guy named Joe Fallon, called me, did a phone interview, a couple months, a couple weeks, month, whatever go by. I flew out for an interview with the product development team. And then this all started in January, and then I ended up getting hired in like August. So it took them a long time. But yeah, so my dad gave me the advice to overnight the owner, a letter, knowing that it would get his attention, and it worked. So without my dad telling me that, who knows? Maybe I'd be selling chemical cleaning supplies right now. Who knows?
That's amazing. It's one of those types of companies that it's like impossible to get into
For
unless you know
sure.
somebody, especially
Yep.
back then.
Yep.
How long were you there?
So I was only there for a little over a year. Admittedly, like I loved the job, but it was hard because I moved all the way across the country. My friends and family are all still back in Atlanta. And then I got an opportunity to move back and open up a card shop. And that was always at the time, I thought that's the greatest thing in the world. So I moved back home, opened up a card shop, opened an online retail. So I was an online retailer selling all kinds of stuff across the country. So I did that for quite a long time. And then
Did
that
Upper
kind of,
Deck tell you're crazy? Like you're at Upper
no,
Deck?
no,
What?
they
What did they
were,
say?
they were, it went smoothly. Of course, I was nervous. I was terrified to have to tell my boss that I was quitting. Admittedly, it was pretty smooth. I think they liked me. I don't think they thought I was the greatest employee they've ever had. So it wasn't like they were willing to fight and pay me whatever I wanted to stay, but they were appreciative of what I had done. And it was a very amicable breakup. It's funny. So one of my bosses there was a guy named Greg Cohn, and now he works with me here at Leaf. He's the senior VP of product development, and we run the company together here. Come full circle. We were working together then, we're working together again now. But yeah, so it was pretty amicable. They didn't
Okay.
tell me I was crazy or anything. It was good because so I did a little bit of help with them or help for them after I left. Like I would still build checklists, and I remember they would send me cases of product and as a payment for building product for them, and because I knew what I was doing with that. So I would help them build checklists and help them do some stuff. And then I used my product development knowledge to help me. I've done some consulting for Tops, done some consulting for Panini, and now obviously running Leaf. I think the thing, and this is another little piece of advice for young people, whatever. I was very fortunate because I worked every angle of sports cards. So I worked at the retail, I worked at a card shop, I worked on the distribution side. So the intermediary between card shops and the manufacturers. I worked at a manufacturer. So like I had done a little bit of everything. So it really opened my eyes up to have a really good understanding of the industry in general. Because if all you do is work retail, you might not understand what really goes into making a product. And you might say this product sucks, but without knowing why it was done the way it was, it's hard to tell them how to fix it. Same difference if all you've done is work with a manufacturer, you might not understand the challenges that go into selling at a retail level. So I was fortunate because I had worked at a pretty young age. By the time I was 25, I had worked at all kind of
All
avenues of the
levels.
trading card world. So I had a pretty good grasp of the whole cycle because it is a cycle. You build a product, you have to sell it to the distributor then has to sell it to the card shop then has to sell it to the end consumer. And I had also been the end consumer that then bought the product and opened it and sold it on eBay and traded it. So I had done it, all of it.
Whole supply chain. Yeah.
So understanding that gave me a huge advantage to really understand the market a little bit better in general. So I'm very fortunate because I got to work at all angles and I had worked at big card shows. I'm in the National Sports Collectors Convention, which is the biggest card show in the world. There was one in Atlanta in, gosh, I want to say it was like 1999, and one of the local card shops hired me to work his booth so I could stay at the booth and he would walk around and buy deals. So I manned his booth for the whole weekend. And this was when I was in high school. I got to experience that. So I got to experience a lot of different things, and I think that really helps. If you want to be a video game manufacturer, or a video game designer, I think it probably helps to work at a gaming store for in high school because you can understand the end consumer coming in and saying, "Oh man, the new Mario Kart game is terrible because it's whatever it is." Like you really get to learn more about the overall industry as opposed to just seeing it from one angle.
My dad used to always say, he was in the restaurant business forever, and he would say, if you want to open up a pizza shop, you should work there for 6 months first.
Yeah, yeah, and look, Chick-fil-A is one of the most successful branches in the world, and you can't run or own a Chick-fil-A without having worked there. And like to me, that's a really cool thing. You should have to go through it and see what it's like.
Yeah.
See what it's like to run the fryer cook and see if it so you know what that person's going through. And not that I've done every job, but like I've worked in customer service on the trading card side because when I had my online retailer, I did a little bit of everything.
Uh,
So just understanding all sides of it just really helps open your eyes and gives you a better understanding of where you need to be at with everything.
so almost what, 15 plus years owning your own card shop?
Yeah,
16 years.
I only had the retail store for only about 3 or 4 years, but I did online retail for about 15 years. I quickly realized that the retail side of it was not the super lucrative side, and I hated working the holiday hours. So I didn't want to have to be away from friends and family every Labor Day and every Black Friday, and all of those days were the days when retail was pretty big because those were the sale days, and I hated that. So
Yeah.
I got out of the retail side fairly quickly and then transitioned to doing just online retail where even if I had to do some work, I could do it from the lake house or whatever at night on Labor Day weekend where I didn't have to be in a retail store in a retail setting.
What was it like the inflection point for you to go to Leaf?
So I had known the previous owner for a long time. I had actually done some consulting for him. Like Leaf used to do a bunch of tennis product and I had helped a lot with that. So I had done some stuff helping them for sure. And it's interesting. So Leaf started way back when in 1948, and none of us were involved. But in the current iteration, it started in about 2006 as a company called Razor Entertainment. And as luck, whatever one you want to call it, I was the president of Razor Entertainment back in 2006. So I was involved with it from the start, helped like my dad hired the guy that made the logo for Razor Entertainment. So we did some products and then the name Leaf became available. So they bought the Leaf Trading Cards name. And I wasn't involved in that time, other than occasionally, again, I was consulting and helping. So, got the opportunity to come work here. Probably I started about 3.5 years ago. And then I became president like around almost 2 years ago now, running all the day to day. I love it. I love the manufacturing side because that's really where you can be creative. It's hard to be super creative on the distribution and the retail side, but here make what we want. And obviously, we need to listen to what the end consumers and the collectors are saying, but we can be more creative and do more. So it's a lot of fun. I joke like I've never had to get a real job. Like today, I was watching the French Open because we have a deal with Carlos Alcaraz, and I'm waiting to see if he wins on the semifinal to go to the final because, yeah, I enjoy watching it, but it matters to us. So,
That's
not
cool.
many jobs. Most jobs, it's like you got to turn your monitor off if your boss comes in.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm the opposite. If I go into somebody's office and they're not watching the French Open, I'm like, what the heck are you doing? We need to know what's going on. Yeah. When the Masters is going on or whatever it is, like those things are
March
very important
Madness.
to us.
Everybody keep the
Right.
TVs
Right.
on. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like
That's funny.
we got to know what's going on here. It's if you're into sports, it's a
Yeah.
dream to work at a place like this for sure.
What do you think is the most important thing you learned at Upper Deck that looking back that maybe you applied at Leaf?
That's a good question. I think the thing that I learned the most was trying to get my hands in everything as much as I could. So I was hired to do product development, but I didn't let that say, I have always had, there's two mentalities to me in the world. And one mentality is I'm not getting paid enough, so I don't want to do anything extra. If they want me to do extra, they got to pay me more. And my mentality was I'm not getting paid enough, so I need to show them what all this other stuff I can do. So I would go help, like I'd go sit with the finance team and say, okay, like I want to understand the process of how you guys the product I'm making so that I can have a better understanding of if you don't really understand how they cost it, then you're not going to understand when they tell you it's over budget. You're not going to know why. So going and talking to the financial side, I remember talking to the acquisition guy because he would be the guy that would buy all of our game used jerseys and understanding how much does it cost to buy a jersey? Where do you source them from? How quickly can you find them? So I could understand when building a product, okay, if I need a Walter Payton jersey, is that going to be something that's actually attainable? How much is that going to cost me towards my product? I would go talk to the customer service people and figure out what are the end consumers complaining about? Do they not like the way the cards look? Do they not like the condition? Are their autographs too smeared? Are they too light? Are they whatever it is the collation poor? So I would try and really, and some of it was just trying to be helpful, but some of it was, again, trying to learn as much as I could. My dad told me, and my dad gave me tons of great advice throughout my whole career and as I was a kid. And of course, when he tells me this when I'm 18, I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever, dad. But make yourself invaluable and get to a position where you can do so many different things that it's almost like they can't fire you. And then the other thing he told me, and I apply this every day, is that no one at a company is irreplaceable. There's no one at a company that's irreplaceable. It doesn't matter how high you are. I'm the president, but if I died tomorrow, God forbid, Leaf trading cards is still going to go and somebody will come in and it'll be okay. Maybe some things will change, but it'll be, in the end of the day, it's probably going to be okay. Yeah. And the best example I always have for people is Apple. Steve Jobs was Apple and he was the most important thing. And without him, Apple couldn't survive. And he passed away, and Apple's better than, in terms of profit and products, they're bigger and better than they ever have been. And it doesn't mean they wouldn't have gotten there without Steve Jobs, but they got there anyway. And so I guess the point was is to try and stay humble. I tried to be very humble at Upper Deck, help anyone that I could, no matter what, even if it wasn't my quote unquote job description, it didn't matter to me. If somebody came to me and said, hey, I really need your help with setting up this event. I know you're not in event planning, but can you help me? Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I'm willing to help. Some of it was because I was young and quite frankly, I moved across the country and didn't know a lot of people. So if I worked till 8 o'clock at night, what did I care? It wasn't like I was
Yeah.
missing going home to my family. But I've told the young people too, do that when you're young so that when you're older, you've moved up the chain and you don't have to do that as much. If there's a night when I need to go home, I can leave at 3 o'clock if I have to, and I'm not getting yelled at by anybody.
Yeah.
But you can't get there without putting in the work. Again, so much of it is about putting in the work. But I think the most important thing I learned at Upper Deck was be kind to everybody, be nice to everybody, help people. Because Upper Deck was huge when I went there. There were about 400 people there. And there were so many departments that I never really interacted with, but I tried to do everything I could to help them and be nice to them. Because look, you never know. Maybe you're going to need finance. And it was funny, like I was the lowest man on the totem pole in product development, but I could get my products costed faster than anybody because I befriended the finance people and was nice to them and would help them. So they're like, okay, I've got a job from Josh.
Yeah.
I'll
Isn't it
I'll move
crazy? I
a
was
little
just talking
fast.
to somebody last week, and she's like the founder of a online retail company. And one of the pieces of advice she said was like being nice. And I'm like, isn't it funny? That's free. Everyone can do it. But even in the
Yep.
business world, I feel like a majority of the people you meet, they don't understand that just being kind and being nice goes such a long way.
It goes an incredibly long way, and that's one of the things that we've really done at Leaf. Admittedly, the previous owner could be abrasive for sure. We treat people differently for sure. And look, do we occasionally get taken advantage of? Maybe, maybe. But the reality is, like, we've developed really good relationships with agents, with players. I would go out and say that I don't think many agents that you talk to, or many players that you talk to, or vendors that you talk to would have anything but nice things to say about us. And that's a motto for the whole company. Like, I don't want anybody, no matter who they are, misrepresenting Leaf trading cards. If you're going to go to a show and you're going to wear a Leaf trading card shirt, you better treat people with respect, even if they're a pissed off customer, because those happen. You don't have to be nice to, you don't have to be just cater and say, oh, yeah, I'll just do whatever you want. You can treat them with respect. And same thing here. Look, being the boss is hard when you have to fire people. I hate firing people. It's horrible. So the worst thing about my job, but you treat people with respect when you have to do it. Because at the end of the day, I really try and take a step back and think about, they're still people. They still have their lives. They still have their families to go home to, their bills to pay. So we try and be overly fair with people, pay them a little bit of extra money if we can afford it. At the end of the day, it's humanity is a pretty important thing. And I'm going off the rails a little bit here, but I think being nice is like you said, it's free and it's pretty easy. It's not that
Yeah.
hard to be nice and respectful to people.
One of my mentors, a guy named Ryan Hawk, and his younger brother's AJ Hawk. And so Ryan's got a big leadership podcast, and he says he would rather, and Ryan played football too.
Okay.
He played it, and then Ben Roethlisberger transferred in at the
Oh,
Miami of Ohio.
oh,
So he had to transfer about a year
yeah,
later. But he's got some great advice. And he says he would rather lead with trust and maybe get burnt once in a while than not lead with trust and live a life where you're wishy-washy with people. He just would choose to lead with trust,
for
and that's how
sure.
he chooses to live his life. And I often think about that.
Yeah. And it's like
You
it's
don't have
not
to
that
earn my
hard.
trust. I'm going to give it
Yeah,
to you.
yeah, yeah. There's no reason to be dismissive right from the start.
Yeah.
And we try and and the old saying, put yourself in somebody else's shoes. We really try and do that as much as we can. If I were the customer or I were the employee and I was going through that situation, how would I want it to be handled on my end? And again, every situation is not going to end up perfectly. That's unfortunately, we live in reality and that doesn't always work out. But being nice to people, treating people with respect, trying to do everything you can. We'll go by on Fridays a lot of times at 4:30 and just tell everybody they can go home. And they look at me like I've got three heads, and I'm like, it's 30 minutes. It's not a big deal. But like it means the world to them.
Yeah.
And if I could make that big of a difference in somebody's life by sending them home 30 minutes early, like it's such an easy thing for us to do as a company, but we really try and value our employees and try and treat them with respect and know if they have we had an employee whose father had a medical emergency and it was way far away from here, and look, take care of that. We're not going to stop paying you. If you have to be gone for 2, 3, 4 months, whatever it is, take care of it. That's more important than anything that's going to happen at Leaf. We're making trading cards. We're not changing the world here. Take care of your family, take care of your dad, take care of whatever you have to. We'll be here when you're ready to come back. But it's easy.
Part
It
of being a
really
team,
is.
right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that at the end of the day, my feeling is always if you treat people like that, when I need someone to work on a Saturday, if I do, they're like, okay, no problem. I don't mind doing that because I know that when I am going through it, Leaf's going to be there to help me, and that's more than just Leaf. That's just how we should treat everybody, whether it's company wise or friends, family, whatever it is. But yeah.
Yeah. I've heard you talk about this, but I'd love to hear it in your own words. What do you think the secret sauce is at Leaf?
So I think for us, admittedly, the biggest thing that we do is being creative, our creativity. And look, we're not licensed. So what that means is we can't put MLB logos, NFL logos, NBA logos on cards. A lot of the times, the first reaction when we talk to people is, well, why would anyone buy them then? And our reaction is always the same. Look at it this way. And this is something, of course, we understand because we're in the business. If Fanatics wanted to make a card with Lionel Messi and Aaron Judge on it, they can't because they can't cross leagues. They're not allowed to. By having league
Mm,
licenses, you can't cross pollinate. We've got a card that has an autograph of Patrick Mahomes, Lionel Messi, and Aaron Judge on it. Nobody else can do that. And yeah, they're not in there. They don't have logos. You can't even tell because we do a pretty good job of finding a photo where they're turned, where the logo's taken off, but you can't really even tell. But we can be very creative. We can keep our product a lot more affordably priced. In today's trading card world, Everything's
Crazy.
expensive.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Everything's crazy. You walk into a store and you want to buy a box of Prism basketball, which is like a entry level product, and it's $1,000. We try and keep everything very affordable to the end consumer where they can actually buy boxes for 125, 150, $200. It's not crazy.
How do
And
you guys come up with that though? Like when I see like the Bronx legacy type stuff, the stuff that you guys create, do you just sit around a table and float ideas? Like what is the
no,
creative process like?
I'm going to tell you, and this Greg Cohn is who our head of product development, he's going to, hopefully he never sees this interview because he is the most humble, hates anyone talking about him. There's no question he's the most creative, best product guy in the entire industry. Why we got him and how we got him, how we're so lucky to have him, I truly don't know. He is the product mastermind. So he sits there and he comes up with almost all of this on his own. Now he'll kick ideas off of me and off of some of the other people here. Obviously, I've been in the industry for a long time. I've done product development, but I don't touch it. Hey, you do it. Whatever you, and I've told him, if you think it works, do it. I'm not going to sit here and we trust our employees. We trust them to do what they're, paid to do. There's no one better at it than him. He comes up with all of this stuff on his own. I do most of the autograph deals, so we'll work together to say, okay, who makes sense, who will resonate with collectors, what can we do to get a combination that's cool or a new sport that's cool. But he comes up with all of the product ideas. He puts them all together himself. Like today, he stayed home because he wanted to really focus on one product that he's working on. And he knows that if he's in the office, he gets distracted because people inevitably come by and ask questions and go to lunch and, oh, what are you doing this weekend? And just natural water cooler type of
Yeah.
discussion. So he stayed home to just sit in his office and pound out a product. He's incredible. And all the credit in the world goes to him. Obviously, our team does a great job on the design side. Our team does a great job on the acquisition side, on the execution once it comes in, and the production side where they're getting everything ready and collating it and all that. But
Was
all
he
the
the guy from Upper
creativity.
Deck that you used to?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
he worked there. He was there for, gosh, 12 years or so. He had owned a card shop similar to me before he went to Upper Deck, and then went to Upper Deck, did product development on baseball and basketball, but Upper Deck really took a turn for the worse. So they were huge. Upper Deck had they had the league licenses for baseball, basketball, football, and hockey at one time. Still the only sport that's ever had all four at one time going concurrently. And then the owner just got greedy and did some stuff that he shouldn't have done, so they started losing licenses. So
Do you think
Greg
they'll ever
tried.
like come back at all? Like from Upper Deck?
I don't. The owner died, so Richard McWilliam died probably, I don't know, gosh, now I feel like it's only been 3 years ago. It's probably been 10. It's been a while. And all they have now is NHL. So they do a lot of hockey. Admittedly, hockey is the one sport that really didn't take off during COVID. Whether it was because of Upper Deck or because it was hockey, I don't know. But it didn't really go crazy. I don't think they have the ability to jump back in. Admittedly, the league licenses now are very expensive. If Major League Baseball came to us and wanted us to do a license, yeah, I'd love it. We can't afford that. Like you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. Like it's crazy how much the license would cost now
Wow.
because
Okay.
Fanatics and Panini have built it up huge. Upper Deck still has incredible brand names. I was there when Exquisite started, and SB Authentic is huge, and Ultimate, and they have some amazing brand names. But it'd just be from the financial side, I don't think they could pull it off. But yeah, he worked there for a long time, and then once they started losing the licenses, he realized that maybe this wasn't the best place to work.
Was there
And
anything? Oh, sorry, I was just going to ask you. Was there anything that like Greg had an idea about, and that maybe at the time you thought he was crazy and this is going to flop, right? But you respect him so much, you didn't say anything, and it turns out to be a hit.
I can't really think of any one thing off the top of my head. Interestingly enough, we had this exact discussion yesterday.
Really?
So we were talking about a new football product called Optichrome Football. And the football landscape, we've transitioned and done a ton of NIL stuff. So we actually have high school and college kids in a lot of our football products. And it hasn't resonated quite as well as we hoped it would with the collectors. So his idea was to make the next football product not a lot more expensive, but more expensive, but load it with veteran content. So now it's got tons of autographs of Hall of Famers and stars and legends and all that. And I was like, I think we need to go the other way and just make the products really affordable and take almost all the veteran content out. I said, Greg, it's your baby. You're the product guy. Let's do it. We'll find out. We're soliciting it here in about 2 weeks. So it's going to be it's not a huge price increase. It's maybe 20% higher than it would normally be. but I'm curious to see what the reaction is. His idea was we need to do something completely different than what we've been doing in football, just to try and throw something unique out there and make it stand out from our football products. And there's been some products that I was like, it just seems boring. But admittedly, now, if he tells me it's going to work, I don't even think that it's not.
Yeah, you've got
There's
so much
no
faith
part
in
of
it.
me. Yeah, there's no
Okay.
part of me that's, I don't think this is going to work.
I got 4 questions if you have 5 minutes.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
What's the set that you're most or achievement milestone in your time at Leaf that you're just like most pumped about that you love to talk about?
That's a great question. I would say, without a doubt, is the pop culture product we do. So we do a pop culture product every year. Leaf has been doing it for many years. It started in, I think, 2010. So this is not it's not something that we came up with new. But in under myself and Greg's leadership, we've taken it to a completely new level. And I look at the checklist that we put out this year, and it would take me 20 minutes to rattle all the names off. But most people don't believe that we could. Like, if I tell people this, they're like, "Wait, you have autographs of all these?" I mean, we had Margot Robbie, Clint Eastwood, Al Pacino, Joe Pesci, Robert De Niro. I'm trying to think of just
That's
Chevy
cool.
Chase
Yeah.
and Kevin Bacon. Yeah, it's just crazy the amount of celebrities that we're able to get deals with. So I would say that's the product that's really interesting to me. It's also the product that in the industry is probably has the least amount of competition out there. We're really the only one that can pull this off. So
Don't you
look,
have
as
like
much as I
memorabilia from some of these people too? I
Yep.
feel like I've
Yeah.
seen it
So
in
we'll
card
do
stores.
like swatches from wardrobe they wore in a movie or something like that. Like
Yeah, that's cool.
Dwayne Johnson actually has an autographed swatch card in there, The Rock. So like the amount of people that are in there.
I got something I wanted to show you too.
Oh
This is
wow.
me when I was I don't know if you can see it, but
It's a
this was
little
me when
blurry.
I was
Oh, there it is.
there we
Oh
go.
my gosh. That
So
is amazing.
my aunt takes me to the mall. I'm like 15, like whatever.
Yeah.
And it was in Hayward, California, where he was born,
Okay.
right? In the Bay
Yeah.
Area. So it's one of those things you go to the mall, you get a picture for $20 and he signs your Polaroid.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's probably the one I'm most proud of because it's
Cool.
just so unique. It takes a lot of effort trying to secure all these deals. This past weekend, they had a Dallas Fan Expo, and I was there getting autographs of Michael J. Fox, getting autographs of, we have an on card autograph from the four original cast members from Back to the Future. We did autographs with Huey Lewis. We did autographs with Elizabeth Shue, with Elizabeth Graham, with it's just on
So yeah.
and on. And or Heather Graham, not Elizabeth Graham, and John Boyega from Star Wars, Anthony Daniels from Star Wars. It's just fun to be able to do something that's a lot more unique because these guys don't have a lot of stuff. It's great to get a Lionel Messi card, but he has millions of trading cards. If you want to autograph trading card of Huey Lewis, we're the only company that's ever done
Yeah, that's
it.
really
There's
cool.
not a lot out there.
Do you feel like I was thinking of like opportunities? Do you feel like not having the license, but having on card autos where most companies, for whatever reason, I'm sure logistically it's harder, but do you feel like that's like a huge opportunity for you guys?
Yeah, the on card are huge for sure. Admittedly, we do a lot of stickers because that's just the easiest
Yeah.
way to do a lot of these deals. But we really tried to do as much on card as you can. The reality is they do look nicer. Look, I've been a collector. On card is better, of course.
Yeah.
If we could do everything on card, we would. On card is better. One of the things we've really tried to push the envelope in is what's called an inscription card, where they actually write like a special note, maybe they put an achievement they had in their career, or maybe they
Ah,
put a nickname or something like that. We've had a lot of actors put movie quotes. So you'll have an actor that puts a movie quote from a famous movie they were in, or it
that's
puts the
cool. That
yeah,
sounds
it puts
amazing.
puts the character name from a famous movie. So that just something to really differentiate. At the end of the day, it's a 3.5 by 2.5 inch piece of cardboard. There's only so much you can do with it.
Yeah.
But to try and come up with something that's unique that hasn't been done before, and that's where Greg is fantastic. He did a Pieces of the Past card this year where it was a connection to, it was a shadow box card where we actually embedded an autograph inside the card, and the autograph inside was like Pele, and then on the outside there's a picture of Lionel Messi and a Lionel Messi autograph. So it's like a time warp from
Wow.
Pele to Lionel Messi. And look, sometimes those don't always resonate as much as we think they should. We look at that and think it's really amazing. And then sometimes they resonate really well. Like he did an insert in a product where it was two guys that were connected with a specific moment on the field. So, like, most people don't even know this. Goose Gossage threw the home run that George Brett hit with the Pine Tar incident. So Goose Gossage was the pitcher. Now a Goose Gossage autograph in and of itself is $5-10, and George Brett is more. He's maybe 50. But we put them on a card together and had a call out of June, whatever the date was. Goose Gossage throws the pitch that becomes the Pine Tar incident, and the card sells for $200 because it's a moment. It's cool.
This is
It's
where
unique.
George
It's
Brett's
different.
yelling at the refs and he gets kicked
Yeah.
out, or the
Yep. Yep.
umpires.
Where he
Yeah,
goes completely
he
insane.
loses
Yeah.
it. That's
So
awesome.
like, and then we had George, or had Goose Gossage sign some cards that said, "I threw the Pine Tar home run." And so again, like Goose Gossage, an autograph of him is not expensive, but
Yeah.
that card sells for $100 because it's very unique. It's very interesting. So we try and do stuff like that. Some of the times it's not, it's just a pretty generic card with an autograph on it. But then we try and have a reason. Greg's process, or his thought and my thought, are the same in that there should be a reason to buy every product. There shouldn't just be, hey, buy the product because it's Leaf, or buy the product because it's new. Why do I want to buy that product versus any other product? What is it in that product that tells me this is really cool? I want to buy this product for this. The meat of the product may be the same from product to product, but this one element is why I got to say, okay, I got to buy this product because this is a really cool thing in there, and I can't find that elsewhere.
I
So to
remember
try and
looking
find
at,
a
yeah.
why.
So you guys have these checklists on your website. I remember looking at like the wrestling one and just looking at, I'm like, wow, like a dozen of these would be really cool. The Rock,
Yeah.
Hulk Hogan. I think that's a fun thing to do, is just to look at what the opportunities are.
For sure. And that's what a lot of people do. And for us, it's different too. And this isn't Panini and Top's fault, but when they make a product, they make a whole lot of them because there's a lot of demand for their products. We don't make as much because we don't have licenses and we're not as big of a company. So, like, for example, Bronx Legacy, that product that's coming out, there's two Babe Ruth cuts in that product. If Panini or Topps puts two Babe Ruth cuts in a product, good luck getting it because there's still thousands and thousands and thousands of boxes. When we do put two Babe Ruth cuts in there, you can actually get that. Like, they're not that difficult because we don't make that much product. It allows collectors to actually have a chance when they see that sell sheet. Those sell sheets are nice, but when you see a bunch of really cool cards, admittedly in Topps and Panini, you're probably not getting those
Yeah.
cards. It's like winning the lottery. But with us, it's a lot easier to get those cards. And so
Yeah.
I think that resonates. We're about adding value to the having the collector have end value. And it's not always easy. And look, sometimes that doesn't work. There's always going to be boxes that don't deliver value. But the reality is we try and do our best to make sure that everything is as even as possible. We hand collate every single box. So every single box is hand collated. Whereas again, Canadian Tops couldn't even do that because they're making too much quantity, but theirs is all done by machines. So you're not guaranteed to get anything on a box level. Whereas with
Yeah.
ours, we separate it so every box has one of these 30 names in it to make sure that worst case scenario, you get one of these names that's at least a decent name
We
to
should
try
probably link
and,
to that video that you had with Ryan, a card collector too. I
yeah,
love that sort of
yeah,
tour that he did. Like,
for sure.
it's like the kid inside of you comes out. You're like, wait, this
Yeah.
is how people are doing it. Like,
And
that's
I
pretty
think the
cool.
reality is most people have no idea what the back end of cards is like. And that's where I'm fortunate because, again, I worked at Upper Deck at a young age. If you don't know, then if I tell somebody it's hand collated, they're like, "Oh, Penny and Tops do that too." No, they don't. They don't ever do that. But
Like
most people don't realize
conveyor
that.
belts, basically.
Right. So they
Yeah.
have drops that's dropping cards in there. And look, and again, that's not a
Yeah.
knock on them. I'd love to get to that point too where we don't have the time to hand collate because we're selling so much product. But the reality is for right now, we're going to make sure we take the time, even if it's a little bit more time consuming, to make sure that we're giving as much value to everyone as possible.
Yeah. Okay. Last question. Let's say you're talking to somebody early on in their career. I feel like you've echoed a little bit of this, but what are 2 or 3 pieces of general life/career advice you would impart on that person?
That is a great question for sure. And I think a lot of kids, again, I think to me, the couple things showing up on time. That's something that I'm a stickler for. Get there on time. Make sure if you're supposed to be there at 8, don't show up at 8:05. And especially don't show up at 8:05 with a coffee from Starbucks in your hand. Like you had time to wake up and go to Starbucks, get to work on time. Because that's as a boss, that's one of the biggest red flags. Somebody can't get there on time. It shows me that they don't really care and that they don't respect their job. So that's easy. Everybody can do that. Doesn't require any talent to do that. As we talked about before, be nice and respectful to people. Make sure that even if you're annoyed with somebody, even if somebody's asking you stupid questions, a customer, a fellow employee, whatever it is, treat people with respect. And then I think that one of the most important things for us to see advancement at Leaf is taking the initiative to do stuff on their own. The reality is we've had people that they make mistakes, but I would much rather someone's taking initiative And we have to coach them and say, okay, I appreciate you taking that initiative. Let's try this next time. But doing it without having to ask every time. And I always reference, I'm a big movie guy. That scene in Shawshank Redemption at the end where the guy's been in prison all his life and he won't go to the bathroom without asking the clerk at the grocery store if he can go to the bathroom. And the clerk looks at him and he says, "You don't have to ask me to go to the bathroom, just go to the bathroom." And sometimes I feel like that. They want to ask if they can go to the bathroom. Like, I
Yeah.
find, like, I had a guy work at a show and he kept asking me. I said, I'm going to tell you, if you have to ask me to go to the bathroom, you're not allowed to go. If you ask me, the answer is no. But if you just go, so like taking the initiative is a big thing. And I think for young people, it's hard because they're afraid they're going to make a mistake. You can't be afraid you're going to make a mistake. And I equate this to, I use a lot of analogies, as I'm sure you can tell. The worst thing for an athlete is trying not to get injured. That's when they get hurt. If you're out there trying not to get injured, and that's why a lot of these guys that come back from devastating injuries, the hardest thing is the mental side. Their body's ready, but they're not mentally ready because they're favoring that and they're going to get hurt again. Don't do your job trying not to make a mistake. There's a much better likelihood and chance that you make a mistake then. Take the initiative, do some stuff on your own. I promise, as a boss, I don't ever get mad at people who take the initiative, ever. I know, again, I may tell them, "Hey, that's great. Try this next time." But I'm never going to get mad at somebody. I'd much rather someone takes initiative and makes a mistake than I have to tell them how to do every single thing they do. I don't have time to micromanage everybody. And it's just a waste of whoever the manager's time is to micromanage people.
Yeah.
Get there on time, show respect, and take some initiative. The first two are easy. Getting there on time and respecting people, you should do that with everything you do in life. Take initiative is a lot harder, I think, for a lot of people because, again, people are generally afraid to make mistakes, afraid to get in trouble. And I guess a fourth thing is if you do something, take responsibility for it. You screw it up, okay. I've had a lot of people that have screwed stuff up. And if they tell me, great, we'll figure it out. But if
Be
they don't want
accountable.
to admit, yeah, be accountable.
Yeah.
Exactly. And one of the things my dad said with raising children, and I think this helps with everything in life, is my dad told me, don't take credit for any of the good things your kids do. So you don't have to take responsibility when they do bad stuff. And obviously, that's just a funny joke, whatever. But like at work, don't sit there and boast about all the stuff you do that's great if you're not going to take credit when stuff doesn't go great. Like you want to be bragging about all the stuff you do that's great. You better be willing to take responsibility when you screw up because it goes hand in hand.
Yeah. That's awesome. Josh, I could talk to you for 2 more hours
I appreciate that.
easily. So I appreciate you leaning in this and just being open.
Of course. It's been a
Cool.
blast for sure.
Likewise. All right. Thanks, Josh.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Have a great weekend.
Bye.
Thanks.